manage themselves, and diplomacy is the way they interact and stuff like that. So maybe it's book for organizations, but it's strongholds and warfare and stuff like that. I absolutely think we could just do book 5, hardcover book, like 350, 370 pages. That's just book 5, ancestries. And that doesn't mean if we can fit an ancestry on a page, that doesn't mean there's 300 and some odd ancestries. There might be 100, but now that would still be an enormous number. But think of all the dope ass fantasy species that you can think of, and that you think would be neat. Yeah. And it would be like, here is the normal heroes book write-up for this species. You know, the polar bear people, right? The Rook, I think it's R-U-K. The polar bear people that live up in far northern Vanguard. And you get all the same information that you get in the core rulebooks on the ancestry, but then there's 2 or 3 or 4 pages more about their culture and their nonsense magic items, unique magic items they have, titles they can earn, stuff like that. You know, maybe even new skills that they have. I don't fucking know. But that's an opportunity to do that. We could absolutely do that, and people would fucking love that. So that's, you asked a question about ancestries. We have a first draft of Raiden Wights and Goblins, and we have plans for lots more. John Kelly draws. Yeah, it would not be unique ordinance. It would just be ancestries, right? If there was one thing I wish regarding Draw Steel, I wish we had a little bit more time, which is a major contributing factor, major constraint, time to get more AAA art for more ancestries, because I love the Memenek and the Time Raiders. Obviously I would. They were my idea. And I'm very happy that they are in this book because they inspire people. However, a lot of people look at them and they go, well, how am I supposed to fit these into my fantasy setting? I don't have these. And then I'm like, well, I'm literally like, what are you talking about? These are not in here because we say this. These guys are not in here because they're in Orton. They're here because they're in the timescape. They're here because people play games set in weird. They use classic fantasy gaming to do things like Spelljammer and Planescape. That's Memenek and Time Raiders. That's why they're in here. But I think if there were like 2 more completely original fantasy races, like Pterodactyl Men or something like that, original. Then I think maybe people would understand that. These are not. This is a wide array of things for lots of different worlds. But you know, whatever. I'm happy with where we ended up. So, what were the questions people were asking me that I didn't know? Live stream feed. Thank you. There was another question. I'm sorry, John. There was another question before that. What was that first question? I'm like, that's a good question. Yeah, we say that 3 blank dice, but people don't know that. People think, well, they put it in here. They must assume that, and they're like, it's one of those things where I think the context for that reaction was, why am I cutting the orcs? Thank you, Lavithros. Thank you, IW3. I think the context is, these are cool, but what the fuck am I going to do with them? And we're like, you don't have to do anything with them. That's the problem. It's not that they're like, I don't like these. It's like, well, these are really cool, but what the fuck? And we're like, no. That's the, and I was really in favor of, and James, he didn't talk me out of it. He convinced me. I'm like, no, you are right. He's like, we should not be telling people these are the standard ancestries. I was saying we should say these are the universal donor ancestries. And then these are the exotic ancestries. And maybe there's even something in the middle. He's like, no, it's not up for us. It's not up to us to say that elves are a universal donor ancestry. You know, Phil runs D&D. Phil might run Draw Steel. His world, Valengard, there's no elves. It's not just that they're not around. There aren't any. Right? So, you can't... And I was like, you know what? You are completely right. Anyway. Yeah, well, I'm not just rewriting the ancestry, orc ancestry. I'm throwing it out. The orc ancestry was one... There's a certain thing that I do as a developer where it's like, now that I've broken with convention, right? The Draw Steel ancestry write-ups do not read like encyclopedia entries. They don't read like you're listening to David Attenborough narrating a documentary. There is some, like a couple of paragraphs of encyclopedia entry text, and then there's a story featuring one of these. Because I thought it would be valuable to do to meet one. I still think this, and I cannot be dissuaded from this. Every not only all my instincts and my experience, but also the reactions we've gotten have been incredibly positive. Even though there are people who are like, "This is weird," I'm like, "Yep, it's not my fault that it's weird. It's not my fault that other people do it differently." But I thought it would be better for you as a player and as a director to meet these guys rather than just me go blah 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 and your eyes cross and you're like whatever, right? And I think you learn more. I think you learn more about them by meeting them anyway. So you don't do that with the orc entry. But I was like, okay, I have broken with convention. An entry can be whatever we want it to be. That section between here's what orcs are and here's the orc ability. The section between there that's currently fiction. It could be anything. So, for instance, the human write-up is an elf. It's a high elf college professor who teaches human history. Right? And I was like, I don't think that's going to change. That was awesome. I really like that. But that wasn't like, that was still a lecture, though. It was still a lecture. Right? So it's adjacent to an encyclopedia entry. Right? And then I was like, let's just go with fiction. Right? And when I started doing that, I was kind of grabbing from, I'm like, well, we got those kids that you meet in Thief. Not Thief. I've got those kids, those kid adventurers, these like teenage adventurers who are just on the cusp of becoming like first level that you meet in Priest, my first novel, and you meet them again in Strongholds, Followers, Kingdoms, and Warfare. You see, they're on some kind of crazy adventure, but you're only seeing bits and pieces of it. I'm like, let's meet them again. Let's bring them back, right? And we can see the wood elves, the woad elves, from their eyes, right? They almost certainly think of them as wood elves, but that's not. They're like, what's that? They're like, you mean a woad elf? And it's really cool, I think, meeting and seeing them from the kids' point of view. And then they are the ones who go and they meet the high elves. So you get to see this contrast between to me that was a lot of fun. The iconic characters are not in there. And then I used Sir John in the Memenek write-up, but none of the other iconics are in there. And then it was even my idea of what these entries could or should be was evolving. And so initially I break with convention and I go, I can do anything. And now that it's like, well, now that I've done anything, I start to see strengths and weaknesses. And I'm like, I think the orc entry, it's cool and you learn a lot about the orcs, but you don't get to meet one. And I think it's better. And that entry is like illegally short. That entry, the orc entry is so short that the art team would be like, if we knew you were going to do this, we would have come up with more art. Yeah, well, John Kelly draws. We do have a table. We do have a table in the book, right at the beginning, that says here's the average height of these ancestries. Here's their weight. Here's their lifespan and stuff like that. But I remember somebody was saying, "What do the Hakan look like?" And I was like, they weren't asking me. I was just watching this conversation happen. I'm like, "What do you mean? What do they look like?" And I was like, "Oh, they can't see the art. They can't see the art. That'll solve it." But they're like, "The description doesn't say what they look like." I'm like, "Hell, it doesn't. It absolutely does." Because I consider the whole thing the description. I'm like, this kid is watching this like 9 foot tall woman made of stone. He says, like, she shrugs her shoulders, which was an impressive thing to see in a 9 foot tall woman made of stone, right? It's just probably that person hadn't read the fiction. Well, that's on you because it's in there, right? I don't privilege that information. I don't treat it like, well, you can only have flavor here. I'm like, no. It's a part of a holistic whole. And so yeah, I was like, yeah, I think the orc entry has to go because you don't get to meet an orc. It's neat, but guess what? The patrons already saw it. That's the great thing. Many, many thousands of people already got to read it. So what I'm working on right now, and we can talk about it. Well, we're not going to talk about it. I'm going to do the talking. I just happened to be thinking about this and literally looking at the spreads our general manager was printing out. And I checked my Blue Sky account on my phone, just idly waiting to be told what needed to be cut or expanded. And I saw that somebody had just liked some old tweets of mine on Blue Sky. I'm like, actually, this fiction I wrote is better. So we'll see. We'll see if... I don't know where this is going to go. This isn't done. This probably is not all in the right order, right? There's going to be... There's an opening. There's some context for this conversation that you don't know because I haven't written it yet, but I know it. And that context is, I think, Corva, who is the iconic the Orc Fury. She's not the iconic orc. She's the iconic Fury. Classes have iconics. Not ancestries. That's the problem. We have more ancestries than... Corva, the Orc Fury, I think saves the heroes, but she saves them because they got themselves into trouble looking for her. Right? So, I'm just going to read this, and it's up to you to follow along and be like, what the hell is he talking about? That doesn't make any sense. Nope, because I haven't finished it yet. The men of Farm, and I think this is Sir John. This might be Vanticalisax. It might be Embers, actually, because they use the old goal phrase. The men of Farm and Field to go to war. A war against Lord Saxton and his priest. How is this your matter? John tried to find a way to tell the story that wouldn't take all day. He kicked at a stone with his boot as he thought. A family came to me. Their town is desperate. They can either die or fight, and they cannot fight. So they hired me. Corva looked Sir John up and down. How much? 11 silver pieces. Is that a lot? John shrugged. It was everything they had. John relaxed as he saw Corva's eyes soften. She understood. A difficult offer to refuse. Aye, Sir John said. Corva looked up to watch Corva looked up to watch 3 crows idly circling, rising, riding a heat haze into the sky. How many is the opposition? Saxton has no regulars, just some knights. We can take them. But he has the Whitewater, led by Bonebreaker Dorkor. That's 3 companies of elite light orc foot against a handful of peasant levies. We need the Howling. Perhaps. I know Dorkor. She is not like my brother, a head of meat and muscle. Dorkor is a thinker. You seek the Howling because you seek a counter to the Whitewater, but even better, talk to Dorkor. Deny Saxton the Howling and earn the allegiance. Actually, deny Saxton, that's not, I missed this up. Deny Saxton his pet orcs and earn the allegiance of the Whitewater. Is such a thing possible? Embers asked. A moment passed. Corva didn't break eye contact with John. It's possible, she said. And then there's a discontinuity, and this bit might come before that bit. I don't know yet. I haven't played that Tetris yet. My sister died, leaving my brother chieftain. I tried to save her. I failed. I tried to lead in her stead. I failed. She said these things with no emotion, no inflection. Then her gaze dropped to the sandy ground, and her eyes unfocused. A moment passed. How clever the dead are, she said, her voice a little hollow. To torment us from the grave. We need the Howling, John said, if we get you your tribe back. Corva sighed, and after a while returned from her reverie to look at each of the heroes in turn. I'd rather go fishing. John smiled. My sister liked fishing too. And this is just from the tweet. This is just copied from the tweet and pasted. But this is going to turn into the orc entry. This whole thing. 5 swords, John said. 5 broken swords. He was looking at the broken swords hanging from Corva's belt. I don't think I've ever seen an orc survive 3 challenges. They couldn't kill me, and I wouldn't yield. She noticed Sir Vanticalisax's shield. I thought the Dragon Knights were dead. Yeah, well, John said. They couldn't kill him, and he wouldn't yield. The Howling or the Whitewater tribe, Dazar said. Either would be formidable in any battle. Either would be a formidable foe in any battle. Such is the reputation of orcish warlore. Corva shook her head. Orcs have no great love for battle. We love trees and green things. We love an unspoilt land. For this reason did Kul place us in the world, the last of the speaking peoples. But also did Kul place fire within you, Embers said. Yes, Dazar said. You are not pacifists. You are warriors. We are pacifists, Corvus said with an emphasis that seemed almost a shout. Then a beat of silence, and a smile played across her lips.